I stayed in a 15-year marriage with a incredibly abusive, high-functioning alcoholic. And I didn't stay in my marriage because I'm weak or because I'm just stupid. And I didn't stay in my marriage because I refused to accept the reality that he was an addict. One of the reasons why I stayed in this marriage is because I was so anchored in the perception of who I knew he could be when he was sober that I refused to accept the reality of what that addiction had turned him into. And if you've ever been caught in a marriage like this, if you've ever struggled in a narcissistically abusive, psychologically abusive marriage behind closed doors, you know how hard it is to leave. It's a very complicated situation to be in. And so I'm going to talk about it. One of the criticisms that I received from family members when I finally left, and I did leave, when I finally left, and I discovered that the abuse doesn't stop just because you get divorced, I received a lot of criticism and judgment from people who I thought would be there for me. Some people said, you know, if the abuse was that bad, you could have left him years ago. You chose to stay. We don't have any sympathy for you. Stop crying about him being the problem. You're the one who stayed. You could have left. You chose this. This was your choice. Deal with it. And now this is an incredibly common criticism that we get. Survivors of narcissistic and psychological abuse are often met with this type of criticism when we finally do get the courage to leave and we think that our village is going to show up for us. We soon find out that that's not entirely the case. And so, I'm going to tell you why I stayed. I'm going to tell you the reasons why I was so rooted and anchored in the perception of who I knew he could be when he was sober. And that's what this channel is about. My name's Elizabeth, and this is From Hell to Healed. I started this channel as a testimony, really, as a guide. I'm not a psychiatrist or a doctor or an influencer. I'm just a mom. I'm a survivor. I survived that marriage and I survived the abuse after the marriage. And then when he passed due to his addiction, I survived the grief. And I survived what came after when his family came in and tried to take over the wealth that he and I spent 17 years building. I survived all of this. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about why I stayed, why it was so hard for me to leave, how I left when I finally did leave, and what that looked like, what it looked like to watch the man that I loved devolve into the absolute worst version of himself, and what it looked like for me to go down there and chase him. Not only was he a villain in this story, but he's also a victim. He's a victim of that addiction. And not only am I a victim of his abuse, but I'm also a villain in this story. I'm not perfect. I didn't make all the right moves. I didn't do all the right decisions. And so this is a complicated story that I hope I can tell with authenticity so that it reaches someone that it needs to help. If you're a survivor, if you've struggled through this, if you have lived your life with an addict, then this is basically for you. When I was going through the worst of it, I remember thinking, God, I wish there was a YouTube tutorial that I could follow that would guide me through this and make things easier. Because as a victim, you find yourself isolated. You're behind closed doors and there's nobody there with you. And you have to do this alone. And so that's why I've created this. This is my way of giving back, my way of shining a light into those dark corners, my way of tossing a rope, hoping that the right people will see this and that they can use this in their journey. So let's get into it. Why did I stay? Why did I stay for 15 years with the man who abused me? Well, it never starts with abuse, first of all. You never meet the love of your life and you think, "Oh, he's gonna abuse me eventually." That doesn't happen. And for me, we met very serendipitously. We met in a very unexpected way. I was coming off of a relationship, he was coming off of a relationship, and I just moved back to the city of Dallas, and I was, excited to start my life again. I was looking forward to interviewing with this company. I'd gotten a interview for a position as an accounting clerk, and I was excited. It was in the city, and it was a beautiful, beautiful building, and I felt like, I'm from a small town in South Texas, and so for me, this was peak. I'd done it. I'd reached my dreams. As a little girl, I'd always wanted to leave my small town and work in the big city, and here I was. And as I walked through those doors to find this interview, this beautiful mezzanine opened up before me. It was filled with people. And I remember thinking, God, this is an amazing place. And right as I walked through those doors, a group of guys walked past my eye line, and there was this tall, blonde, green eyed, suit wearing man. And our eyes met. And when I tell you, it was like in the movies where it was just instant, instant zaps. I immediately in my head, I was like, wow, I'm going to enjoy working here. Look at that. Look at that man. He was just, I found him so attractive. And, I find my interview where I'm supposed to interview. I get on the elevator, and he walks in behind me with this group. And we're both kind of like, hello. And it's a moment. And I'm standing there, I'm very shy, I don't wanna speak. And he kind of starts the conversation, he's like, "Oh, do you work in this building?" And I'm like, No, I'm interviewing for a job here." And he's like, "Oh, well, I hope you get it, good luck." And that was it. And so the elevator goes up to my floor, and I step off on the floor, and he steps off behind me, and I look at him like, "Are you following me?" And I open the door to the building I'm interviewing, and he opens the door for me, and he was like, "Oh, is this where you're interviewing? This is where I work." And I'm thinking, "Oh, no. I don't know if this is good or bad. This could be amazing, or this could be it's the job I'm interviewing for. You never wanna date someone that you're working with in the office." And so I'm immediately like, I don't know. The chemistry was just intense, and the connection was just intense right off the bat. And so I go in and I interview, and I finish, and I leave, and I end up getting the job. And I find out later, after we start dating, that he threw himself on my interviewer's desk and begged her to hire me, and said that if she didn't hire me, that he would quit. He needed me to work in that office because I was going to be his future wife. And that's how it started. Now we started flirting. He was adorable. He didn't really know. He was he was not shy. He was an extrovert, but around me he was a little bit shy. And so he tried to find ways to talk to me, and I noticed that he was trying to get my attention in certain ways, and I was trying to be professional. I didn't want to start a relationship in an office. So I was kind of trying to be like, this isn't a good idea. Even though I was incredibly attracted to him, and our connection, the way that we spoke, he made me laugh. Oh my gosh. And we just kind of poured into each other really easily. The conversation was just really incredibly easy. I didn't want to date him right off the bat because I didn't want the perception of being that woman. And so I tried. I tried my hardest, but it didn't last long. Once we started dating, we quickly became best friends, and we were inseparable. We enjoyed each other's company so much. We did everything together. We worked out together. We did everything together. And I had never met someone like him who was so intelligent. He was so intelligent and so funny and so charismatic, and who just got me. understood me. He understood my jokes. He saw me. I had never met a man who actually saw me as something other than just a conquest or something other as just, a pretty face. He saw my intelligence. He saw my compassion. He saw my heart. And it wasn't until years later that he told me that he manifested me and that he had been praying to meet a woman like me. And then I showed up in his life. And so we had this wonderful, wonderful, we didn't fall in love right away. There wasn't any love bombing in the beginning. We were both very kind of guarded about sharing our feelings with each other because he had just gotten out of a relationship and I had just gotten out of a relationship. And so he wasn't immediately saying, "Oh, I love you. You're the woman of my dreams." He didn't say that he loved me until probably 3 months into it. And even then it was, "I adore you. You know I adore you, right?" We tried to take this slow, we really did, but we were so enamored with each other and we were so just smitten with each other that it was hard for us to slow this down. And so a year after dating, we got engaged. And the day we got engaged, I was actually irritated at him because I was trying to get a workout in and I had stuff going on. It was a random Tuesday. We had just had Valentine's Day and Valentine's Day being the day of love, and I wasn't expecting an engagement, but I knew where we were headed. We were living together, we had an apartment, and, we did everything together. We never were without each other, and so I knew where this was headed, but it was a random Tuesday, and I was in a bad mood. And he was like, "Well, I wanna go out to dinner tonight." And I was like, "It's a Tuesday. We have work tomorrow. I don't wanna go out to dinner and stay out late." And at that during those days, I did not understand about addiction. We both drank, and so we were drinkers. And we both enjoyed going out, and we both enjoyed going out to dinner. We both enjoyed having a bottle of Malbec and going out to dinner and eating great food and just enjoying the nightlife, and it wasn't a red flag to me at the time because I also drank. And on a random Tuesday, I wasn't feeling like going out, but he convinced me to go out to this restaurant, and I did, and, he proposed. And of course, I said yes. And we started planning our life together. We, started building a house together, and we were so excited. The house that I'm in now, this is the house that we built, and this is the house that we got married in. We moved to the suburbs, we built this beautiful house, and, we got married in the backyard. And we had 30 of our closest family and friends in a very intimate ceremony. It was very, very easy and just relaxed, and it was not stressful, and it was just fun. And those early years were so wonderful. They were beautiful. Now now that he's passed due to his addiction and now that I've gone through and done the healing, there were red flags in the beginning that I couldn't see. And there was always points where when he was drinking hard liquor, where this version of him would come out. And I didn't like it. It didn't sit well with me, but we had a very strong relationship. We had a very strong sense of communication. And so if there was ever a situation where he was an asshole, which he could be, I mean, and so could I. We were very passionate, and so we battled each other quite a bit. And in those early years, the red flags looked like on occasion, he would say something that was disrespectful or rude, and I would call him out on it and say, "Hey, you're not allowed to talk to me that way. I don't appreciate it." And we would work through it and we would talk it out and then we would resolve it. And he would say, "Okay, you're right. I'm sorry." And there was always accountability and then there was changed behavior. And so for me, those red flags, they turn green when there's accountability and changed behavior. And what I notice now when I look back, someone could say, "Oh, well, I knew immediately one time when you were together, he said this, and it was so disrespectful and rude. I knew immediately that he was a dick, and then it was going to be a disastrous marriage." And that's fair. There were certain occasions where when he was drinking, he was definitely a dick. But for me, I knew that was because of the alcohol. He didn't act like that when he wasn't drinking. When he was sober and when he was acting normal, when he acted in his normal way, he was a good guy. He was a great man. He had compassion and empathy that wasn't performative. He did things for people without expecting anything in return. He did things for me just because he loved me and wanted to make me happy. I grew up in South Texas. I grew up in the country. I come from a line of ranchers, and I've always had a garden growing up. And so, I mentioned to him that I loved having a fresh garden. I always enjoyed picking vegetables and having fresh vegetables. He was a city boy. He didn't know anything about growing anything, but he built me a raised garden bed and managed it and found out he had a green thumb. He was fantastic with growing anything. He could grow anything. And just little things like I would mention how fun it would be if we had a fire pit, and then he's out there building me a fire pit. He was one of those honeydew husbands where he couldn't sit still. He always had to have a project. And so he would ask me, like, is there anything you need from me? What do you want me to do? And I could give him a list of things that we needed or the house needed, and he would just go do it. I didn't have to ask him. I didn't have to beg him. He wasn't in the other room ignoring me playing video games. We were always together. We did everything together. We worked out together. We watched TV together. We're with our friends together. We were out in the yard together. Everything that we did together. We spent a lot of time with each other. And the compassion and empathy that he had for me and that he had for his friends and that he had for his coworkers, that wasn't performative. That wasn't rehearsed. That was just him. For instance, there was a guy in our neighborhood who was going through a divorce, and he was really struggling. He worked at the hospital. He worked long hours. And my husband knew that he was struggling. My husband was always in the yard, working in the yard. He loved working in the yard, and his yard looked fantastic. And so he noticed that our neighbor yard was getting overgrown. And one day I'm on Facebook, and my neighbor posts this big old long post about, I came home from a 12-hour shift at the hospital, and someone had came and mowed my grass, and I'm so grateful. You have no idea how much this means to me. I've been struggling and I haven't been able to do the things that I used to love doing. And having one of my neighbors come and show up for me like this, whoever you are, I want you to know that I'm so grateful. Thank you. And I mentioned this to my husband saying, oh, you're not going to believe this. Listen to this. This is so cool. And he goes, oh yeah, that was me. I did our yard. I know he's struggling. It took me 20 minutes. It wasn't even a big deal. Glad to do it. And he just did that. That was his way of showing love, acts of service. And he did that for a ton of people. In fact, after he passed, one of my favorite things is to hear stories about how he showed up for other people. It reminds me of who I knew he truly was. And so that addiction comes into play later on in our story, but it wasn't there in the beginning. Those beginning years were beautiful and they were lovely. And yes, of course, there are red flags that I can see now, where I think that addiction was weaving its way into our life, but I couldn't see it. I loved him fully and truly, and he loved me. And when we had our children, we brought them home to this house, and watching him turn into a father, it was a gift. He was adopted as a child, and he had never experienced family the way that we had built this family. And when his children came into his life, he changed even better. He changed for the better. He controlled the drinking in the beginning. When I pointed out that, drinking hard liquor made him act a certain way, he stopped. And so there was this accountability on his part where he knew that hard liquor was an issue. And he stopped drinking it. He only drank beer in those beginning years. And after he became a father, and when his daughter was born, he became a girl dad. I love girl dads. He was so excited to be a girl dad. He wanted a girl more than anything. And finding out that he was going to be a father, I asked him to keep it a secret because it was so new and I didn't want to speak too soon, but he couldn't help it. He was actually emceeing a wedding at the time and announced it to the 300 people that were there. And he couldn't wait. And when she was born, he was such a doting father. He doted on her. She was his little princess. She had him wrapped around his finger, as it should be. And those first years, I look back on with such gratitude that I got to experience them. And it's hard for me to talk about what comes next, but that's the whole point of this channel, so I'm gonna do it. But I love the memories. I love the memories of him being so proud of the family that we built, and him being so proud of the children that we created, and him being so proud to be my husband. I love remembering those good times. And even though as I continue these episodes, it's gonna get dark, it's gonna get a lot darker. I just want to remind everyone that, in the beginning, sometimes that beauty, it blinds you. And it's hard to accept what this addiction does. Yes, he's the villain in this story, but he's also a victim. He's a victim of that addiction. And I now know through my healing and through the work that I've done that that addiction played a main role in turning him to the monster that he became. And that addiction also plays a main role in turning me into who I became. I became the worst version of myself in this as well. I did things I'm not proud of. He chased his demons down to the bottom of that bottle, and that bottle drove him straight to the depths of hell. And I chased him down there to try and save him, and I couldn't. And that's really what this story is about. This is a digital memoir, if you will. This is a way for me to talk about what we went through and what I overcame and what took him from us. And so if you know someone that this resonates with, I would love for you to push the buttons and like and share and subscribe and comment. I love it when people reach out to me and say, thank you for telling the story. I lived this and this helps. If this helps you in any sort of way, comment, let me know. And, there's more to come in the next episode. I'm going to be talking about what really sent him down that path and why it was so hard for him to come back from it. And so if you've been here for the whole episode, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one.